Hello, today I thought I'd do another one of my What Have I Used 1 Year On videos. This is where I gather everything together from an art haul video that I did just over a year ago and look at how I've used those products over the last year, whether I liked them or didn't like them, or liked them but haven't got around to using them yet. So this was a group of art materials which I really was excited to open. And when I looked back at which art haul was next to do a 1 year on video about, I was again really excited to realise that these products were all clustered together, because on the whole I have really enjoyed these. First of all then, I'll talk about these Lefranc Bourgeois Flashe Paints. I'd bought quite a few of the individual jars, and then I'd also got the starter set which had these 6 little tubes in and some varnish. I'd got the starter set so that I had some of the primary colours for mixing. A lot of the other colours that I'd bought were landscapey type colours. And there we go, that shows them a little bit better. So I've used them quite a bit over the last year. I think my favourite colours, I've probably used about half of the big jars. And then the tubes are getting pretty low. Oops. So I unreservedly love these paints. I'll just paint some out now and show you them a little bit 1 year on, how they paint out still. They've probably thickened up a little bit, but not in any way that makes them a problem to use. So still beautifully creamy and rich. So these paint like really good quality acrylic paints, but they have the advantage for me that they dry matte and that you can go over the top of them with coloured pencils. I find that coloured pencils don't go over the top of acrylic paint because it's slightly shiny and slick for the pencils to grip onto. So they dry quite quickly. That green that I've just painted is pretty much dry already. I've also found that I really enjoy having the jar format rather than having to squeeze some acrylic paint out of a tube. It's so nice just to take the lid off and the paint be there ready to go. I haven't had too much trouble with them getting gunked up. The lids have gone on and come off perfectly easily. I'd bought an extra white set even though there was a white tube, because I knew that I'd probably get through that quicker. I've got maybe a third of that left now. I don't actually have loads of paintings to show you that I've done with them. That's mainly because I've sold most of them. They're a good company and have got light fast ratings, which I trust, so I have used them for pieces that I plan to sell on my craft market. I think this was an experimental painting that I did using a credit card just to try and encourage myself to loosen up a bit. But this was all done with the Flashe paints. And I'll try and find a few other paintings that I did using mainly the Flashe paints. I store them now in one of these plastic cases, which is from the Really Useful Box company. And they fit in perfectly like that. I'd also bought a couple of tins around that time. I got a larger metal paint palette just to try and organise my watercolours a bit better. And then I'd bought this Kendal mint cake tin to rehome my more pastel watercolours. And I did use both of these tins for that purpose for a while. And no complaints with either of them. This is just a good standard paint palette. And this is a lovely little tin. And now I keep in it some of my loose oil pastels. So I had some duplicate Sennelier oil pastels when I bought a couple of sets, and they're in here. And then I bought a couple of Holbein's oil pastels just to try them out. That's those. And then I've got a few Caran d'Ache Neo pastels in colours which I don't have in my favourite Paul Rubens higher oil pastel set. If you've seen many of my previous videos though, you'll know that nowadays I keep my watercolours all together in these big tins, which are Derwent pencil tins that I've spray painted myself. Looking a bit battered now, but they do get used a lot. It was also around a year ago when I decided to reorganise all my coloured pencils. I'd bought one of these black pencil cases that hold about 120 pencils. I'd put my luminance pencils in the first one, and I enjoyed using it so much that for this art haul a year ago, I had bought 3 more. So I've got my quite old now Polychromos set in one, and the whole set fits in perfectly. I don't use these a great deal, only when I want to do quite detailed pencil drawings. Then I've got a variety of pencils in the next one, and I've made these colour swatch charts to go with the cases as well. So the Inktense in there. I've got my charcoal pencils from Generals, an old Derwent graphic pencil set, and then Derwent Graphitint set in there. And then in the third one that I got back then, again I've got another mixture. So I've got the Albrecht Dürer pencils, I've got some Derwent watercolour pencils, and then I shuffled things around a little bit because I've got these new Carbothellos and then some Derwent pastel pencils. So they've got a bit messy and paint splattered and stuff, but I really can't say enough good things about these pencil cases. They've just made me enjoy using my coloured pencils so much more. I attach the wrist strap to all 3 zips so that they can be opened and closed all in one. I don't actually close them loads, I just stack them in a cupboard like this, but none of the zips have had any faults or anything. The stitching of them has held up fine. So yes, very, very happy that I got those. Also in this art haul, I bought some Art Philosophy water-soluble oil pastels, the Rustic range. I actually talked about these recently in my video where I was talking about gelatos and tempera sticks and gel sticks. I didn't particularly enjoy them, and so I don't have them anymore. Also at that time I was still looking for a blending tool for oil pastels that I enjoyed using, and I'd bought some sponges during the art haul a year ago, but they turned out to be too soft. And nowadays I use the firm wedge sponge which comes in the set of Faber-Castell gelatos. But also I've got these really dense foam inserts from a Stampin' Up acrylic stamping block case, and I'd chopped some of that off and been using that as well, and these are pretty comparable and I really enjoy using these, so I'm no longer on the hunt for anything else to blend my oil pastels with. I'd also bought a couple of books, and there was this beautiful one called The Book of Earth by Heidi Gustafson. I still absolutely love this book. I just enjoy looking through it from time to time, just soaking in the colours and textures. It's a really gorgeous book and I've got no regrets whatsoever having it. I have to admit to not having read much of it though. I tend to use my art books quite visually as inspiration and relaxation. I'm sure I would learn an awful lot if I actually got down to reading them though. And then I'd also got this book, Wildflower Watercolour by Sushma Hedge. And if you've seen many of my other videos, you've probably seen me using this book. I've used it quite a lot over the year. It's got really nice, easy, step-by-step instructions. And again, it's just one that I heartily recommend if you're ever having a painting block. It's the kind of book that's nice to pull out and just get your paints out and just do something without having to fully engage your brain. Just play with the paint and follow the book's instructions. I'd done this page not that long ago. I think I was swatching out some Paul Rubens paints. I'm not 100% sure. But I thought it would be nice to swatch out the paints into flowers just for a change. And this was the sheet that I'd done, using Wildflower watercolour as inspiration. Then I'd also had the idea back then to make some little wooden palettes. And I'd wanted to drill depressions into some wooden slicers. But that is a project I haven't even given a second thought to, so I've still got... Actually, that's not quite true. I did do that. I forgot about that one. I still like the idea of it, of just being able to give gifts or even sell them on my craft market. A little selection of professional watercolours. Looking at this, I can remember that I'd tried using a certain drill bit and it wasn't very successful. So I think I need to do some research on a better drill bit that makes nice, smooth, round depressions in the wood. Yeah, I'd given it a go there and it was kind of chewing up the wood a lot. And then I got these smaller branch circles just to do samples of 1 or 2 paints. So I might still do that. I do like the idea of it still, but it hasn't happened yet. And whilst we're on the theme of things that I haven't got round to yet, I'd bought these empty paint tubes from Jackson's. They're great. I'd had the plan to mix some of my own watercolours up. But again, that's not happened. I've hung on to the empty tubes though because it's still an idea that I like and haven't given up the hope of doing one day. Also talking about watercolours, I'd got this Mijello Mission Gold Pure Pigment set. It was the 24 plus 2 colour set. So I'd squeezed some of each of these out into a half pan and they're in my main palettes now. And I find that I'm very happy to reach for the paints. And surprisingly, because I'm not really drawn to like these warmer colours up here, but these have actually quite impressed me from this set. For example, at the moment, I've got the permanent yellow light in my little micro portable painter palette. I haven't used the blues and browns as much, partly because I've got a lot of blues that I like in other brands. And with the browns, they're very smooth, clear paints. And when it comes to using browns, I prefer to have granulating ones because it's usually that I'm painting landscape and rocks. So I tend to reach for my granulating ones. The Cobalt Green Deep is the first PB36 that I'd ever had. And I really, really like it. That's had quite a bit of use. The main qualities that I'd say these paints have is that they're quite soft paints. They are very, very pigmented and re-wet very easily. And I just find them really good, reliable versions of each of these colours. I just find them very smooth and pleasurable to use. And they end up in numerous of my smaller palettes from time to time. I think this set as well was an incredibly good value way of getting hold of some Mission Gold paints. And so no regrets at all on having these paints. I think the paints that I find the most similar to are Sennelier's. Then also in the art haul I'd got a number of paintbrushes. I'd enjoyed my first set of Princeton Neptune brushes, which I'd got maybe a month before these ones, so much that I went and bought this set of different brush sizes. I've used all of them throughout the year. and I am a big fan of the Princeton Neptunes. I'll just paint a little bit with them now, but I'll use all Mijello Mission Gold paints from the set that I just showed you. So this is an oval wash 1/2 inch brush. I don't know what I'm doing here exactly, just I guess some kind of vague floral thing. And this paint is the Mijello Mission Gold Rose Madder. So the Mijello Mission Gold paints don't flow super fast. But that's been okay, because when you know the qualities of your paints, you can fit them according to specific purposes. And then there was this square wash brush, 3/4 of an inch. This 12 round is another absolute staple brush, I think. And then I've got the number 4, which again has been a super good little brush. This is Mijello Mission Gold's Autumn Orange. And I'd also bought this Rowney number 8 Filbert. And I think this was an acknowledgement of the fact that I don't like really, really pointy round brushes. Sometimes a nice rounded edge is much more useful. So for example, I've got this Rosemary & Co. Series 402 brush, and the bristles are absolutely beautiful. It paints really nicely, but I don't find it always helpful to have a really, really sharp point on brushes. I think that's possibly why I like the Princeton Neptunes. They're a little bit blunter. Anyway, I bought this Filbert just for when I want something ultra blunt. So yeah, you just get that nice shape when you need it. And this paint is one of my favourites from Mijello Mission Gold, and it's Quinacridone Violet. And the last brush I bought was this Princeton number 12 Snap brush. It doesn't hold quite as much water or is as soft as a synthetic squirrel like the Princeton Neptunes, but I was just curious about it. And it is a surprisingly nice brush. I haven't used it a huge amount because I had bought it for doing really large florals, and I just haven't actually painted many large florals this year. So this paint was Mijello Mission Gold's Permanent Red Deep, PR 254. Anyway, I've not done them justice at all on that page, but I do like the paints and I do like the brushes. Also in that art haul, I'd bought a couple more of these Canson XL watercolour pads, which have long been used up. I buy these on repeat just because I think they're so enjoyable for swatching and playing around with watercolours when you don't want to use really expensive 100% cotton paper. And then the final thing which I bought were these Liquitex acrylic markers, and these are all in their large 15mm size. They aren't something that I use loads, although as you can see I've definitely used them a bit, but I do very much enjoy them. I think the Liquitex paints come in a really nice range of colours. The one thing I don't like about these paints compared with the Posca markers, so I've got a few of these equally wide Posca ones. They've got quite similar nibs. The Posca markers dry a little bit more matte, whereas these Liquitex ones have got a sheen to them. And I'd prefer not to have the sheen, but it's not the end of the world. And you can't get these kind of colours in the Posca range. I know that the Molotow markers do some really nice colours, but I haven't tried any of those out yet in these larger sizes. So I've not used them for a few months. We'll see how they're doing. Well, still nice and juicy, which is a good start. Get a bit more ink flowing. I think this sheet's going from bad to worse. So they do have an opacity marking on them. I think all the ones which I'd bought are opaque, because that's usually my preference for everything apart from watercolours. And I'll just show you a picture now of what my intention was with them. So this was a mixed media painting. I think I've got a watercolour background, and I can't tell everything that's on it. It looks like soft pastel, which is why I store it with a sheet of deli paper in between it. But then I'd gone in with the markers. So here you can see all of these beige areas. This is the this is the unbleached titanium pen. And then again in the sky and on the hillside here, I've got some of this light blue violet. And I think there's some of the bright aqua green in the sea as well. So that's what I wanted them for, was just to add kind of chunky, fairly opaque details into mixed media paintings. So I hope you enjoyed seeing what I've used 1 year on. This was definitely an art haul that I loved, and I'd say the majority of the materials in it I relish using and can happily recommend. The Art Philosophy water-soluble oil pastels were probably my least favourite product. But even those weren't terrible, it's just that I've got products that I enjoy much more that are similar. So thanks ever so much for watching. Bye!